Gentlemen, we have been trying to do this for a year and a half. I don't know how long. I love the fact that we have this amazing story between Rick Mears and Jimmie Johnson. Here we are at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and you guys got here by coming out of the Southern California off-road racing world. This is where I wanted to start. Who would think you, Jimmie, with 4 Brickyard victories here, 4 wins here, you, Rick, with 4 Indy 500 wins, again, coming off of dirt, you jumping through stadiums in the Mickey Thompson series, you just in everything, Baja 500, Baja 1000. Why don't we start there? Where did racing in the off-road world come into your life, Rick, after coming to California?
I actually just started, as a hobby, family recreation on the weekends. And I think when I was about 10 years old, Mom and Dad always had a bike. And when my brother and I were really little, my brother would get on with my dad and I'd get on with Mom. We'd go for a ride, mostly pavement rides, And then we'd get out and play in the dirt a little bit once in a while. But Dad ended up buying me a little 50cc Tohatsu motorcycle. And I was about 10 and went out and started riding in the foothills. And it just progressed from there. I kept riding all I could and kept trying to talk Mom and Dad into letting me race them, and they wouldn't let me for a long time. And Dad had raced in the Midwest, so it was kind of, racing was in the family a little bit. But when we moved to California, when I was about 5, he got out of it completely. So, we went fishing, we went water skiing and riding motorcycles a little bit. And that's where it all started. And then eventually turned into racing them. Then Mom was afraid I was going to get hurt on a motorcycle and wanted me to something with a roll cage and a seatbelt. I didn't realize it was her idea at the time, but we went down and watched the buggies race at Ascot Park, and Volkswagens, we were into those in the sand dunes when the Volkswagen craze was just starting. And went down and looked at them in the pits afterward. And on the way home, Dad says, "What do you think about racing one of those?" And I said, "That'd be great." I didn't think it'd ever happen. And he said, "We'll make you a deal. You give up racing motorcycles, we'll build one." And so we put one together and started racing Ascot, and it just took off and snowballed.
Wow. So the Mears gang, famous, right, Jimmie? Your family as well, definitely known in the off-road racing world. What was it like for you? Where did that introduction to dirt, and whether just fun or a little bit of competition, where'd that come into your world?
It was really fun related. Growing up in Southern California, I lived in the foothills as well, and we just ride from our house. Summertime, we would be at the Colorado River water skiing and playing in the water, and then the rest of the year we're in the sand dunes. Really riding dirt bikes and 3-wheelers at the time. My dad was very mechanically inclined, and he had friends in racing, so some stock cars, also some off-road racing. And I got to a point where I was ranked nationally on dirt bikes and riding for Suzuki, and just got busted up so many times.
Yeah.
And the last race that I ran in on my dirt bike, I broke both my feet and like 7 toes. And I remember my parents were like, "We just can't do this anymore." And I had so many broken bones through my motorcycle career. But that's all we could afford. And my dad was a mechanic on other cars, and then I just didn't know how it was going to happen. But my dad's persistence, my dad's networking within the off-road industry as he was working on a stadium buggy, he just got to know the right people. And then eventually went to work for BF Goodrich Tires. And as he found his way into BF Goodrich Tires, I then had a little tire budget that I could use, and then I was able to put that towards a roll cage, and actually raced against Rick's son Clint and his nephew Casey. I mean, we all got started really the same year racing these little off-road buggies back in the 90s.
Did you know, Rick, that after your IndyCar career, after you'd retired, there were folks coming up behind who weren't just looking at you from an inspiration standpoint with open wheel and Indy 500, but who were looking at you for everything you've done, like Mr. Johnson here? I mean, your influence goes deep.
I appreciate that. I mean, I tell you, I was as surprised as anybody, and never did any of it. I never dreamed of being at this place. It was way out of my league, It's like you, it was a family deal. We were having fun. We'd work, Dad had a little construction business, and we'd work during the week to make the means to go play on the weekend, and it just kept going. I can look back and see what happened to help cause it, but I wasn't doing it. I didn't know it. I wasn't doing it for that reason. As we got the opportunity, the sprint buggies at Ascot won the championship the first full year. So I won a single seat frame high jumper for a desert.
Okay.
So we built that car and then started running Baja, Mint 400, and all of those. And different opportunities started popping up. And I didn't stay in one thing all the time. I could be leading a championship in whatever I was in at the time. And if somebody said, hey, what do you think about trying one of these? I'd say, okay, and I'd skip a race and go do it. Well, that kept the name popping up in different places, and the racing community, is a small world, once you get out into it a little bit, and never dreamed of making a living at it. It was just having fun is all it was. And opportunities. But when I look back at it, I think not trying to get somewhere actually helped, because 100% of my focus went in what I was doing at the time. And that focus created results. And then that result was creating those next opportunities. And it just kind of snowballed that way.
How about for you, Jimmy? Because I remember hearing your name early, mid-90s, and there was clearly big talent there. But was there a dedicated plan? Or was it a little bit like Rick's example of just going to find what is working and keep trying to build from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think much like Rick described, I can look back and see the road that I was on and the road that developed for me. But in the moment, I had no clue any of it was going to happen. I wasn't sure if I was on a road that was leading to anything good either. You're just...
I stayed close to the backhoe just in case.
Just in case. You don't know. And I felt like as I was climbing through the off-road ranks, some of that I could see and thought, all right, if I do good here, that'll get me this opportunity. But little did I know that, I think it was like the 1991 or 1992 Los Angeles Coliseum Stadium race, that Herb Fischel, the head of GM Racing at the time, was sitting in the grandstands watching. And in that little superlight, racing against his son and his nephew, qualified fast time, won my heat, and they inverted, and I came through in the feature and won the feature. Out in the parking lot, and this guy in a sport coat and slacks walks up. We're at a dirt race, like, you don't see that. Who's this guy? And it was Herb, and I didn't know who he was, but we take this Polaroid picture, and he takes that picture and heads back to Detroit, and later that next week, he threw the Polaroid picture on the table in Detroit to the group and said, put him under a contract. And then I got a phone call at my parents' house, and hey, we want to talk to you about driving for Chevrolet. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. There is no way this is
a buddy
happening.
Prank calling me right now.
Completely.
Wow.
But I think, I really, as I reflect back, who I knew or who knew of me, there's that, your reputation and how your name pops up in different areas. Like, there is something really to that you can't control.
Right.
But it happens, and you're on someone's radar and you don't even know it. And in the end, I felt like who I knew for a large part of my career, or who knew of me, was more important than what I could do behind the wheel. Just continuing to keep those doors open. And I was young enough to where I didn't really need the results. I just needed to keep moving, and my name needed to keep popping up in different places. And with Chevrolet's help, I found my way into stock. Well, first the stadium trucks, then desert trucks, then stock cars, and of course met some really key people along the way that made it happen. But it's just the wildest road. Like, I can't believe how it all came together.
Well, it's like myself jumping around doing different things I was doing.
Super V's, right?
That, and also I met Parnelli in the off-road. He was doing the desert stuff when we started that. And then when I went to Pikes Peak, I met Unzers. And through Parnelli and the sprint buggies, met Al. He was driving for Parnelli at the time. So same way, I just kept bumping into these people, that eventually that kept the name, coming up in different places. And the V and Super V, it was all, that was just a local guy in town said, I was running the desert stuff, and he was running SCCA Cal Club region in a Formula V, and he said, what do you think about getting your pavement license? He had a little dyno in his garage, and he'd dyno our engines for us once in a while. And let us know where they're at. So he said, I just bought a new Super V. He said, how'd you like to get your pavement license in a V?
Kind of like
Sure.
a USF 2000 cars, road to Indy level car.
Sure.
Yeah.
But this is the thing I love about the two of you, where you go from flying through the air on bikes, busting yourself up, unfortunately, but that develops more into more off-road, four-wheel, stadium stuff. That then develops into NASCAR, which again, very foreign by comparison to what you had been doing. Rick, on the other hand, is coming more or less straight off of dirt into a wing downforce open wheel car, and he is running last as well. And then you look at Art Sugai and you look at how things start to take off. You do well in this lower rung junior open wheel car, and before long he's getting inquiries about, hey, Indianapolis, hey, this IndyCar Champ Car Trail. It's insane.
I mean, yeah, basically, you know, I was doing the V and the Super V. I ended up getting a Super V ride along with the V ride, and a friend of mine that was in desert, he said, hey, I'm going to the runoffs at Atlanta, you want to go? I jumped on a plane. He lived in LA, a doctor, and he drove in the desert, and he was always wanting me to drive with him, you know. So he said, you want to go? I said, sure. We jumped in the plane, flew to Atlanta, and watched the runoffs. And that's the first place I heard Bobby Rahal's name. He was running the runoffs there. Didn't meet him, but I remember hearing his name there. And then we come back, and Doc said, how would you like to run a Super V? He said, I'd like to try to get to the runoffs in Atlanta. And I said, sure. He said, I'll make you a deal. I'll supply the car. I'll go get a car, give it to you. You maintain it, get it to all the races, and see if we can qualify. He said, under one condition. I said, what's that? You co-drive me in the 500, you know. I said, oh, okay, twist my arm.
That's a
you know?
deal.
And that's how it all started. So I ran that year. That was the first, I'd run a half a year in the V, and then the next year was a full year with both cars. And to qualify to go to Atlanta. Well, in the meantime, later on that year, I got a call from Simpson. And I'd met him he was one of our first sponsors.
Wow, Bill.
And he said, what are you doing next Wednesday? I said, I'm working, you know, I was still operating a backhoe. And can you get off work? And I said, for what? And he said, I want you to test my 5,000 car at Willow Springs.
Oh, wow.
I said, sure, I can get off work. So went over there and did the test. And at the end of the test, he said, I want to sign you up for Formula 5000 and or IndyCar. And that's what started all that. But we ended up running the Cal Club region in the V and Super V. Finished third in the V, and he had to be in the top 3 to go to Atlanta. I won the Super V class, so we qualified both cars to go to the runoffs. And then I got the IndyCar deal, and one of the first IndyCar races was the same weekend as the runoffs. So I never got to go to Atlanta.
No way.
But that's how quickly it just
Jumped.
came together, yeah.
It's amazing these names that you just kind of bumped into
Yeah.
and built relationships with are the most predominant names in the sport. It's incredible.
It's good old California.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much happening there.
Such an
So many
amazing time in
around,
racing.
yeah.
It was
It was.
awesome.
You know, one thing I'd love to explore, and we're going to get to IndyCar and Indy 500 here in a moment. Rick, you and I have discussed this at length before, but coming off of non-permanent ground, you're used to racing with dirt, rocks, whatever it is. Your skills and expertise have been developed handling and feel for vehicles with things that are not fixed. Then you move on to pavement. What was it like for you, Jimmy, in adapting? Because I know Rick's told me that having to build those skills of a car that's always moving under you, you're constantly having to control. Well, wait a minute, I'm now on fixed ground. This is actually, I don't want to say easy, but good Lord, this thing isn't trying to kill me all the time. I think I can work with this. What was it like for you making that transition off of dirt and gravel and whatnot into NASCAR and pavement? How did your driving skills adapt, or what areas did you have to develop?
I think in the beginning, some of the test sessions that I had in the first stock car I ever drove was an ASA car. Like, I didn't go through late models and a lot of the other lower divisions. My opportunity with Chevrolet was really to go right into the ASA series, which is a touring short track series with, that's where Alan Quickie came from, and Rusty Wallace, Johnny Benson, just a long list of greats that, made it into the NASCAR world. So I ended up in this like really stacked kind of late model division, and I felt like I was just attacking too hard all the time and just too aggressive with the car. And, you know, I'm off of the corner every time, sideways, burning the tires down. And the team's like, you can't do that for 100 laps. Like, you get one set of tires, or maybe you pit twice, depending on the series you're in. Like, you can't drive the car that far sideways. So I think there was a point where I just kind of needed to start over and really adapt. But once I understood the car, I could run a car way looser than most. And when I look back at my time in NASCAR, Jeff Gordon started the 48 team, and our cars were built in the same shop for many years, and would leave the shop identically set up. And over a race weekend, mine would just gradually get looser and looser. And just as time went on, I was able to really tap into that experience I had sliding around and just find that sweet spot and get the car out into a bit more yaw. In a Cup car, when it's a bit sideways, a few degrees, there's more side force on it, there's more downforce. And we really found this sweet spot that exists with a car in yaw for NASCAR at that point in time. And man, it worked so well. And then the other thing that went with it so well is in a Cup car, the gas tank is behind the rear axle. So as you run laps, you lose your rear weight and the car just inherently gets tighter and tighter and doesn't turn. So my starting balance and the fact that I could start much looser than others would give me this backside of a run speed that many weren't willing to start the car that free.
What about for you, Rick? Because I know that your immense car control skills, granted you were known as the finesse guy here at Indianapolis, but you had fast hands if you needed them. But tell Jimmy about the transition for you from dirt to pavement and big oval racing like this. Your skills, again, it's a crazy concept. You didn't come up with these little finicky open wheel cars that just you tuned yourself to that. You happened to find that everything you built before you got to Indy applied to Indy.
It did. I mean, it's off-road racing. I remember Parnelli saying it years ago when we first got into it. He said it was one of the most demanding forms of racing he ever did, and I agree. You know, it was with me too. I mean, it taught you so much. There were so many things that applied. First of all, focus. You know, you've got a lap that's 800 miles long. You don't memorize it, right? So you have to learn to adapt. And this is where jumping around in a lot of different cars helped me adapt quickly. You know, just jumping in different things. You learn to pick things up quicker. And you know, in the desert, you learn to read the terrain, and you're looking at the berms. Does the berm start early, and how long does it take to grow? You start seeing washboard. It's, you know, that means it's a little tighter corner, more braking. You're always looking at the runoff of the mountains and the direction of the canyons, and you know, for these cross ditches and everything. So you learn to read all of that, but you know, because you got to get everything out of a corner the one and only time you go through it. It's not like you get to practice and build up. You've got to figure it out. And I remember running out in the desert and have one of these nice fast corners coming up, and you know, get in there and get the thing all set up, and get it pitched in and slide through, because you're trying to, you know, judge it all, and come out the other side just up on top of the berm, just barely making it. Just, you couldn't get any more, right? And come out of it and you go, yeah. Then you look around, there's nobody out there. Nobody saw it. But it just, the focus and the concentration for, you know, 8, 10, 12, 14 hours. And again, it had to be a high focus because you never knew what was coming. When I got in an Indy car, 3-4 hours, you know, of focus was a snap. And in that respect. But the car control, just all the other things that go along with it, you know, it was all a plus in so many different ways. Just, you know, you're talking about running loose and the sliding around the dirt and all that. The Super V that I got, when Doc bought the car, it was a Pro Super V, and they ran wings, right? Well, I was going into Cal Club, and wing wasn't legal. You had to take it off. Well, okay, I took the wing off. You know, I've set it in the garage and kind of square things up, figure the cambers, what it looks right, you know, and I go race it. And I run the whole season, right? And I always thought it was a little twitchy, right? It had the same springs and everything on it for the wing. Okay. And I was running it, you know, I didn't know to change anything. I just took the wing off and started driving it. So it was basically loose all my life. That
so
car.
Oversprung.
Yeah, and I just thought that's the way they were. And that's what I learned on the pavement. But So when I got in a car that was kind of balanced, I thought, oh, this isn't too bad. But it just all, in my natural driving style, the faster the corner, the better it suited me. I was always more of a fingertip driver than a palm driver. And I didn't like a lot of movement, and I was always tried to be smooth, and I didn't like to work hard. I wanted to take it easy. And I was always lazy, so the better the car worked, the less I had to. So I wanted to work on the car a lot. But it just seemed to suit me, like the Speedway, Ontario, the first place I drove an IndyCar, and I just kind of went with it, But also, not a lot of people searched around back then on the pavement. And with dirt, you're always looking and searching and moving around. And I think that helped me learn how to tune the car on the track while I'm running, where I placed it, how I placed it, when you lift, back in the corner up, doing whatever you needed to do. And those things all just kind of came natural to me once I started driving the Indy cars.
Does any of that sound familiar, Jimmy? Because I've always thought of you, first of all, you're the James Brown. We're the James Brown of NASCAR, the hardest working guy. He says he's lazy, and he's not kidding. He does not want to have to put in too much work, and I respect that. All he achieved while trying to knock off a little early, that's amazing. But I've always genuinely thought of you in your career as really Rick Mears in NASCAR, of highly perceptive. Rick mentioned seeing every little thing, looking for how it might affect his performance, an advantage to be found, not abusing the car, being as precise and just crisp as possible. To me, those are the things that really accelerated your career and made you the champion that you are. I've always seen this commonality between the two of you. Anything he mentioned about the perception of the driving approach and such, does that resonate with what you've seen within yourself?
Yeah, there's a lot that has, and I think that maybe there's something in, being spending time in California when you're
El Cajon,
young.
Bakersfield, 3.5 hours away. Yeah, all right.
The California thing, maybe
Yeah.
our approach, certainly our backgrounds are similar, and the dirt experience that we had, and I think our families are similar. And, so there is definitely a foundation that's there. The thing for myself in my career is whenever I was lazy, I ran like crap. And one of my off-road team owners, a guy named John Nelson, he spotted it, and he would hold me accountable. And Rick Johnson was my teammate at the time, and Rick's accountability and John Nelson's awareness of the accountability I needed, he helped me realize that, I'm better when I have pressure on me. I'm better when I have somebody kind of coaching me and mentoring me. I needed that structure. And then once I understood like what that space was like, I was able to generate it more on my own. I think the pairing with Chad Knaus was another extension of that. And I mean, there's not a guy that's more worried about accountability and putting pressure on a driver than him. And I'm thankful for it, because he brought the best out of me. That was an environment that I thrived in. So, when I look at my career, I wasn't the flashiest and fastest guy. I did just enough to get by. And it wasn't by design, but I didn't have this instant success. And I realized through that journey that I just had to work harder. I had to work harder than the next guy, and that's fine. I no problems with it, and I enjoy it, and I still kind of feel that way today. I just got to pull my boots up and get to work.
Let's talk about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indy 500. This young man is about to do his first Indy 500 here in a little over a week. Super fast today, opening day, third position. Why don't you tell him what your first Indy 500 was like? I know this was many moons ago. You were probably 4 or 5 years old, but knowing that he's about to go through this, the pageantry and the pressure and the love that he's going to receive, what was it like for you the first time, Rick?
Just remember to buckle your helmet.
That would be. I'm going to think about that on Sunday. I'm going to giggle.
Obviously the first one I didn't make. The second time was the first one with Roger, after signing with Roger. And we qualified on the front row, outside front row. And so the media from that point to the race was all about, is the rookie going to make a mistake? Is the rookie going to blow it? Is the rookie going to do this, right? So I made up my mind I was not going to make a mistake. And I've always been the type to I slow myself down rather than pump myself up.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of pressure on myself inside, but I don't want to make mistakes. I don't like pain. And desert taught me years ago that you can't win if you don't finish.
Yeah.
So the pace is fast enough to win, slow enough to finish. But and bikes taught me that I don't like pain also. But so we get ready, you know, the race is coming up and all this is going on with the media and the rookie. So I decided I'm going to stay, not that I don't like the hoopla, but I don't want to calm down. I want to stay relaxed. So I stay in my room as long as I can in the morning of the race. Then I get out to the garage. I'm going to stay in the garage, kind of stay out of all of it as much as I can, stay calm and stay relaxed. Well, in all my relaxing and staying calm, I ended up being late getting in the car.
Oh, no.
So now I've got to hurry, right? And I'm in a dead run to get to the car. And so I throw the helmet on, and I thought I buckled it, but I went in both loops and came back through both loops instead of over one, right?
Yeah.
And I pulled it, and it felt like it tightened up. And I didn't give it the second yank I normally would. And then jumped in the car because I was late. And so we come around, get the green, take off, and go down into 1 and 2, and start down the back chute, and the window starts going up like this. Like, wait,
You're kidding.
I can't stretch far enough. So I grabbed the thing, and I pulled the helmet down so I can see. And now I'm running around there with one hand, right? And I just couldn't get myself to make that call to Roger. Hey guys, I forgot to buckle my helmet. You know, I need to stop. First race, and first Indy. So finally, you know, I held on and drove for a few laps, and finally I thought, you know, I'm going to take me and somebody with me here if I'm not careful. And so I finally got up the nerve to make the call, and just about the time we had a yellow, got lucky. And I just made the call, but then the yellow came out.
So you had to tell on yourself?
Yeah, so I had to tell on myself.
Dang.
But so then we got to come in and fix the helmet and got going again. But and the race it was going well. We'd had a little problem with the gearbox. I had a first, second, and 2 fourths. And so it'd take a little while going from second to fourth to get the turbo lit, you know, and we'd drop back a little bit after the yellows, but we'd work our way back up and got into the, you know, top 5 and was kind of hanging there, and then ended up losing the engine probably because I was having to over rev the thing trying to get the split down. But other than that, it was a good day.
Always eventful.
Jimmy, why don't we close here? So you are getting close to achieving a dream of competing in your first Indy 500. I know many of us hope it isn't your one and only Indy 500. I appreciate the fact that you have looked to Rick as one of your heroes, not just for his achievements, but for how he did what he did. Knowing how studious of a man you are, I'm guessing at some point in time in your bus, whether you've done it already or will, you'll probably go back and find some YouTube races of one of the best to ever do this here at the 500 and pick out some lines, pick out some approaches. This guy here, I know that you hold pretty close and dear to you, heading in your first Indy 500.
I do, and it's such an honor to be here and have this moment, and then to get to know you over the years. I was telling a story earlier today when the first time I met you. I'm not sure you'll remember, but Clint and Casey and I were racing in the stadium races, and I remember seeing you in the garage area there, and Casey and I were friends, and I was like, oh my gosh, I better go hang out with Casey a little bit so I can meet Rick and talk to Rick. But to have been around you for so many years and to know your family like I do, it's only enhanced, you know, my respect and appreciation for you and your family and all that you guys have done for racing. And
thank you.
To call you a friend, to have have little chats from time to time at different tracks means the world to me. And,
thank you, and believe me, I watched you all along too. You know, the same thing, and I used to get mad because I never thought they gave you enough credit for all the wins and the championships and everything that you accomplished. I remember watching your hands through the windshield quite a few times. When he said he can drive them loose.
Oh
yeah.
It's true.
Turned out
He
well
was
for a
on
while
it,
there.
yeah.
California deserts, the Indy 500. You guys are
Who would've
insane.
thought?
You guys are insane.
That's right.
Thanks so much for taking some time, Rick. Jimmy,
thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you, Marshall.